just got this aura about him. But he seems to have some really interesting answers to questions that I ask him, stuff that you wouldn't ever think about.
Without creativity in your life, it's not worth living it. Creativity comes from creation. It's a godlike thing. I'm not at all religious, but it's a godlike thing. The creative spirit. So I continuously engage the creative spirit. If I've got nothing to do, I write something. I write a story for the paper. Yeah. That is creative. Like the other day, I went for a walk in the forest, and I'll show you the piece. A branch had fallen down, and I took all the leaves off it and cleaned up around it. And then I went home and got myself a pot of paint and put dots on the whole piece, and it looks absolutely stunning. So I engaged the creative spirit in whatever I do. If I set the table, I do it in a certain way, like it's a composition. So I engage the creative spirit for that as well. Small things.
When you're making your ceramic work, have you ever felt like you've been stuck in that and then you've gone to do something completely different, like your walks or setting the table, and that's re-energized you in that space by doing something different? Is that what you're saying?
With my ceramic work, that is specific work that I make as an artist. And when I can't work on that, when it doesn't work for me, then I just go back to the beginning of improving on the skills.
Right.
So I continuously go back to the beginning and go off again. When I traveled for 8 years, and I looked at all the places where ceramic was a beginning thing. Places like Turkey, Greece, South America. They were still working like they did in the beginning of things. Simple work with 2 hands and clay. That's all that was needed to make the things they needed. So I knew about the beginning of clay work. So I continuously go back to that and then go into another direction with it.
Yeah.
So although I just make bowls, I only make bowls because they speak to me most. When I started making bowls was when I met with an American Indian man who had given me some mushrooms and took me for a walk.
Right.
And at one stage, he pointed at the moon, which was the first moon, which like a boat, like a bowl set on the horizon, a silver moon in a dark blue sky. And he said, we call that the receiver. And I knew at that stage that I was going to make bowls. I don't know, just came. You don't question it, you just do it then.
So you had some sort of epiphany in which you realised that that's what...
He just told me that, yes. And I know that on the wheel there are 3 pieces possible. There's the plate, where you see the inside and not the outside. There's a vase, where you see the outside and not the inside.
Yeah.
And there's a bowl, where you evenly see the inside and the outside.
Right.
I'll show you in my art gallery what that means. So I decided to make bowls. And they come in different expressions. So I have a whole series of works that are reflecting the periods of time that I made them.
Mm.
That is my work. That is my soul work. The rest is just extra. Like that piece in Melbourne that you've probably seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is extra.
So I was going to ask you about that. It's funny, when I spoke to you about your artwork a while ago, I feel like you could use that piece as a pretty easy frame of reference to talk to people about your artwork, but you don't often mention it. And so I wonder, how do you feel about that piece of art? And obviously you say that it's something extra, but it's quite funny because it's probably the thing that so many people have seen and not even realise that it's you.
Yeah. What do I think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I was curious because you haven't brought it up before, and it wasn't until actually today is the first time I've heard you mention it.
Yeah, because you're doing an interview about my work.
Yeah.
That came about there's a little story before that, and the story before that is in the late 80s there was a recession and art galleries were closing. I couldn't sell my artwork. So I went to Adelaide, where my parents live. And my mother said in passing, when you were a little kid, you always played in the sandpit which your dad built for you. So on my way home from Adelaide to Dayleslford, I started to think about that sort of sand. So I thought I'd make sand my material instead of clay. And I started in my studio with sand, make illustrations of architectural pieces.
Right.
And I've got them all on my computer. And I made them until I felt comfortable with them, till I could understand what sand can and cannot do. Then I went to art festivals, the Adelaide Art Festival, the Melbourne Art Festival, the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival, and explained to the director that I had a project in mind. And they always accepted me. The project was, I do 5 pieces of the old architecture, of aspects of architecture, especially on the top piece. And the deal was that they brought the sand and that they removed the sand. And they give me money. So I would take a whole day to make a piece like that. And I did 5 of those for the Adelaide Festival and 5 of those in the Swanston Street, or Swanston Walk, as it was started to be called at that time. And one person came to me and said, there is an ad for an expression of interest for a piece of sculpture in the street, because the street is going to be called Swanston Walk. And we widen the footpath and narrow the carriage path. So I knew exactly what I was going to do, because I had such a good response from my building pieces in sand that I was going to make a piece of a building in stone. And that's what happened.
Yeah.
It's since then become a very positive, a very, what's the word I used? It's one of those words that disappear again. And anyway, it's really liked as a piece.
Yeah. So, but it's interesting. So, but to you, that's something extra, and the bowl making is
my soul work.
Yeah.
That's where I feed myself.
Yeah.
That's where I get my strength from.
And so, would I be right in saying then you probably wouldn't have been able to make the piece in the city if you weren't feeling nourished by the...
It's the same attitude.
Yeah.
And I couldn't at that time make bowls because there was no place to sell them.
Right.
There was a recession on. So with that same attitude, I approached the sand. And the path was laid out for me. I didn't do that. Somebody sent me that ad in the paper that asked for an expression of interest.
Yeah.
So I thought, I had never made anything bigger than a bowl.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'll go for that. So I did, and I got it.
Yeah.
It's almost an embarrassment how positive, what's the word? Popular it became.
So that's what I was curious about in that. Yeah, I sense that you've I don't know, when I've spoken to you a bit up at Ilden about your ceramics, and that was something that, again, you didn't mention, so I was curious to see, so that you feel, not a sense of embarrassment, but that you...
There's a danger with so many accolades, because everybody that mentions it feels positive about that work, that it goes to your head. And if it goes to your head, it leaves your heart. And when your work leaves your heart, well, you're in dire straits.
And so that's interesting. I remember at Ilden you also said something to me, be wary of praise. And you said, meditate on that. And I have meditated on that for many months. And And so it's interesting. Even I hear what you be wary of praise. I'm hearing that echoed in what you're saying there, and that you need to be, that you feel uncomfortable with some of those accolades, and that it distracts you from.
I mustn't allow it to let it go to my head.
Yeah.
That is continuously, or when I have an exhibition at the Australian Galleries, which is a really good gallery in Melbourne, one of the best. And to be in that gallery is really a good thing. So people think you've made it when you go to that gallery. So you have to be careful that that doesn't go to your head either.
Yeah.
Because then something missing. When it goes to your head, it leaves your heart.
Yeah. So the other question I had for you, Petrus, listening to you talk about when you saw the moon in the sky and that it gave you a calling to making bowls, how does your environment here influence your artwork? You know, you kind of live, as you've put it, in the middle of the forest.
Yeah.
In this amazing...
Very still space.
Yeah, so how does that influence your art?
Everything influences my art. My walks in the forest influences my art. My journey to Eildon influences my art. Because you go through a park-like environment that is utterly beautiful. It is very stimulating. I could sit on that beautiful veranda and look over that lake and just start writing, which is influencing my art.
Yeah.
I answer every call, and they come at the right time. My goddaughter started podcast, and so she inspired in me to do podcasts, so I took that up.
Yeah.
And I don't know where it's going to take me. At the moment, it's taken me with two guys from Melbourne sitting in my lounge room chatting.
Yeah, hassling the shit out of you.
No, you're not hassling me at all. I find it quite interesting.
What about it?
Every question has a challenge for me. The challenge is to answer it well. But I'm restricted by my Parkinson. With my language, with the flow of my language. You notice I move.
Yeah.
That is not me. That is that spirit in me that is doing that.
How has it changed or affected, or you say you respond to every call? What impact has that had on your creativity?
It has become harder to follow the instigations to new ideas.
Right.
But I know I have to do it because otherwise I'll die. If I can't make or be creative, I would have to say goodbye to this life. Because it's not worth it without being creative.
It's pretty profound, yeah.
Well, that's the way I see it.
Yeah. The restriction of having Parkinson's, has there been any positive in terms of has it turned you on to thinking in a different way in terms of how you make things, how you create things? I think you mentioned that the podcast started in part because you were struggling to make stuff with your hands.
Yes.
So is there any positive to it in that case?
Well, I write more because the very fine work I can't do anymore on the wheel. I used to make the bowl and then break it, fire it, and put it back together again.
Yeah.
I have some examples of that in my little gallery there. So I decided to take a broken piece, is called a shard. I will take a shard and put that on a stand. If you go to museums or old art galleries, you will find ancient pieces of pottery on a little stand and an explanation of where that came from, what material it was made from, what kind of clay, etc., on a little piece of information. That's what I want to do.
Right.
So I've made a set of shards which represent the work I've made over the years. And it's easier to make a shard than to make a bowl. Although some people that see them, they think that the bowl, that I made a really big bowl and then took a piece out. But I just only made the piece.
Right.
I will put little. There's a beautiful stand.
Yeah.
There's a local guy who is making the stands for me, a woodworker.
Yeah.
And he does a beautiful job. So then I make a little story next to it, which I'll just make up.
Yeah.
Piece of my writing. As I'm able to write in here. That's what I'm going to work on.
Right.
Which I'll show you.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. The other, I guess maybe as a closing question, Petrus, I'm personally feeling a bit of like I'm in a bit of a creative rut, and I was listening to what you were saying earlier in your podcast about walking through problems and trying to get you're saying literally getting the blood flowing to your brain to get more creativity going. What antidote do you have, or what advice do you have to someone who's feeling creatively in a bit of a rut? What's wrong?
Without knowing who you really are, I know your name and I've met you a few times. When I'm stuck, I can only go by what I do.
Mm.
I go back to the beginning. I go back to my simple black ball. And I throw that, and then I concentrate for that period on the skill of it.
Mm.
So you go back and you concentrate on your singing or your guitar playing skills. There's plenty to learn from that. While you learn doing that, you get back into your space again.
Mm.
That's what I believe.
Go to the beginning.
Yes. You know, when you learn to play chords, well, you go back to your chords and you play really well.
Yeah.
And better than well. And that will, if you practice that, you get back into that space by practicing that.
Mm.
I believe that.
Go back to the beginning. Start with the basics again.
Yeah.
What do you think about new environments, trying to get somewhere new and somewhere different? I think I've been trying to spend more time away from the city, and in part that's been to try and think differently, see more things, do different things, and perhaps then return home with a renewed sense of, creative interest.
If you go away with it, with your creative spirit, you'll come back with it too, I believe. You continuously offered possibilities, but you don't always see them because you're not open to them. For 1 year, I did my walks in the forest, and each day I made a piece of artwork. Sometimes as simple as putting 6 rocks on top of one another.
Yeah.
Or making a form with rocks. And then I photographed it. And then I set it to music. I asked a local guy to set it to music. He made a DVD. And I still got a DVD.
Yeah.
And he set it to music. And then I sold that DVD to the council, to the Shire.